Good evening and welcome to Kenya Decides. And indeed, before we begin the program, we bid goodbye to Purity Museo and wish her all the best in her next assignment. Definitely will miss you. A conversation tonight on Kenya Decides. We're looking at the running mate question and most importantly, what went into the minds of the presidential candidates in identifying the running mates. But the two major coalitions probably will feature a lot in our conversation tonight. We're live on Facebook, we're live on YouTube, we're live on Twitter at KBC Channel 1. You can also tweet me directly at Kioria. The hashtag is Kenya Decides 2022. In studio, I have Diasy Amdany, who is a political commentator and a women's rights activist. Thank you very much for joining us. I also have Dr. Julian Rowa, who is a social analyst. You're very much welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And finally, Kennedy Ojung'a, a corporate executive with a lot of experience. You're very much welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
The conversation tonight will be much more of a social conversation, looking at this coalitions and what led to the identification of their running mates. But Diasy, to start with you, looking at these coalitions, looking at Kenya Kwanza, looking at Azimio, looking at the likes of Reuben Kigame today, looking at governors and the people they have identified as running mates, you would say this election has a big gender win.
Sure. I think that the election 2022 is going to have an unprecedented number of women on big tickets, the gubernatorial tickets, but also on the ballot, for dual gender seats. We saw during the nominations, women came out strongly. And I think IEBC has helped a lot. You remember they were following through on the Katiba judgment, where political parties were told that if your lists have more than 2/3 of the same gender, they will be rejected. And if you do not comply, we reject the entire list. You will not participate in the election. So parties were struggling to get the women on board. And I think that has helped tremendously. But then women have also come out in large numbers. Even, independent candidates, we are seeing women boldly stepping up to be counted as leaders, and we're excited because it means that our work has paid off. We've been pushing for more women to be, in the political landscape, for the implementation of the 2/3 gender principle. There's nothing we haven't done. We've been to court. We have court orders. Remember, we have a live dissolution order for parliament, which was ignored also. But to dissolve parliament for failure to implement the 2/3 gender rule. So with all this, the courts affirming and reaffirming, and the activism, from the women's rights organizations pushing against that and demanding for that space to be opened up so that we have more women, it is paying dividends, and we are seeing it. And I do believe that we will see more women elected into public office. And of course, with now the move of naming the Honorable Martha Karua as his running mate, the excitement, because I've been hearing people saying, why are women all excited? Women have run for presidency before and everything. But here we're looking at a ticket that has a real chance at winning, because these are the leading, we've got Azimio and Kwanza as the leading coalitions, and we know that their presidential candidates are the people who have been leading the pack.
Let me cut it short because we'll talk about that in a bit. But Dr. Rowa, the 2/3 gender principle, as Diasy talks about, and I remember there was a proposal by Aden Duale of a progressive implementation of the 2/3 gender rule. And it appears like we are there, where the numbers continue, to go up as we do elections.
I hold a different view. Where the agitation of the 2/3 gender rule is concerned. And I think without knowing, we've gotten caught in a web of our own making. Gladly, though, we are beginning to see the emancipation of women in the spaces of leadership, which is very refreshing. I want to believe that women bring something new into leadership. The position I take, though, is that women are as capable as men. And that whereas we are really fixated in looking at women as the weaker sex that deserves certain kind of, some kind of consideration, so that they can break into the spaces of leadership. I think Martha Karua has demonstrated that it can be done. She has been very consistent. She has a brand that we can all connect to. And I think the mere fact that she has been able to break the spaces where men have dominated for so long speaks volumes about what a woman can do or what a determined person can do. So I'm one of those people who look at Martha Karua as a personification of hard work and consistency, far removed from what everybody else would like to look at as a woman. Yeah, that's my view of this. Yeah.
Other than, the running with question for Martha Karua, because the other side, that is Kenya Kwanza, has promised 10 slots in cabinet for women. Do you think that was good faith enough in terms of supporting the leadership of women?
Certainly it is, because you see, as a country, we have committed to this and we have enshrined it in the Constitution. So we really need to ensure that we live by it. So by them offering to give 10 seats to women in the cabinet, that's already good enough. But I think, it's important for us to also begin to reflect that women, especially in this election of 2022, have come out of their own initiative to go and run for elective positions. It's far different from previous election where we were probably actually giving tokens to women to fill the 2/3 gender rule. Okay. Now, in this particular case, the women have come out of their own corners to be able to submit themselves to an elective process. And I think what Kenya Kwanza is offering to give them literally just adds to what the Constitution provides. And I think women now have demonstrated that they're made of the right materials to be able to participate in elective politics and determine the future of the country. So it's good.
Let me allow you, Daisy, to expound on the point you're making, because looking at the announcement yesterday, I would actually have thought this was the first time we were having a woman running mate, because we had Julia Ojung'a in 2007, we had Winnie Kaburu deputizing Ole Kiapi in 2013. But tell us why this time it has excited that vote.
Before I do that, I would like to correct some misconceptions that have been thrown about here. Number one, we're not saying that women are not capable. However, we have to recognize, and our Constitution recognizes, that women have suffered systematic exclusion because of culture, tradition, and practice. Okay? Women have been culturally excluded from leadership spaces because leadership has, for the longest time, been seen as a preserve of men. There are parts of this country where still the issue of women and leadership is controversial. We know areas where they engage in what they call negotiated democracy, where it is elders who sit down. And those elders, they will never consider women because it is just not part of their culture and tradition. Now, in situations like that, we need the law to engineer the necessary social change. So like the 47 seats, guarantee that every county in this country will have a woman leader, regardless of what culture and elders say. You will have to elect a woman. And that goes towards breaking down those barriers and bringing about the change. So we mustn't look at it and say that, women shouldn't be given tokens, or we shouldn't have affirmative action, or looking at some of the women who have come through processes. It's important to note that the group of Martha Karua, Charity Ngilu, and all those that came in 92, I believe, they came into public office. It was actually through a very deliberate program by the late Wanjiru Kehoro, which was about increasing the number of women. And these women were supported. They were identified, their capacity was built, and they were supported all the way to the ballot. So that's what we're talking about, that we need a combination of factors. The political parties playing their role by opening up the space, but we need to support them because there are many things that have kept women back from entering into the political landscape. So we see them having, ascended through and, being strong, and we say, yes, all women should be like that. But if you look at their journey, it has been a journey of support, and that's what we're saying.
All right.
Now, the excitement about Martha Karua is because for the first time, a leading ticket is carrying a woman deputy president with a real chance of actually winning. So there is a possibility that history will be made in Kenya, that we will have the first elected deputy president. Okay, so because when we look at the other efforts that have been made, most of these candidates have been fringe candidates, right? None of the leading candidates have even considered women, even in cabinet positions. I think the one who was very, very deliberate about bringing women into government was Mwai Kibaki in 2002 when he came in without the law. It was also through advocacy and lobbying of women. Charity Ngilu was in the summit. And she negotiated together with women's rights organizations, and they had the list of women. And if you remember, when NARC released their list of nominees for parliament, KANU had released their list, which was all men. They withdrew their list, and they brought back 2 women, and that's how Ruth Onyango and Esther Kano got nominated into parliament. So the excitement here is that we have a leading contender for the presidency that has chosen a woman, and not just any woman, because it is true, there have been those women that are literally tokens, so that the women are agitating for a woman, let's give them a woman. But a woman who is manipulable, is more of a marionette, is you know, just a figure of what is there, but behind the scenes it's really the men leading. And Martha Karua is not that kind of a person. She is extremely capable. She is a woman who has led in her own right. Remember, she's a party leader. She's vied for the presidency. She was for 20 years, and so she's been Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Minister for Water. So she has led with skill and integrity. She has been in politics in Kenya for well over 30 years without integrity questions to her, and that in itself is quite a feat, you know, in politics. Martha will galvanize not just the female vote, but even the male vote, because she is admired because of the caliber of person that she is. She's a woman of her word. She's a woman you can bank on. And I'll tell you, there's been a lot of lethargy, by the way, around this election. And there's been a lot of apathy. And there are quite a few people who felt that there was nothing exciting to take them to the ballot, because it was like, it's the same old, same old. But the announcement yesterday has re-energized the space. And people are saying, you know what? I can actually go for this. I can go for this, because even listening to her speech, she talked about, because people are saying, oh, you know, she was in Linda Katiba, because we were with her in Linda Katiba. She was like, oh, she was in Linda Katiba opposing the BBI, and now she's being designated docket of justice and constitutional affairs. And of course, as Emir have said, first order of business is BBI, but she said, any constitutional amendments must be within the confines of the law. And you know, you can bank on that she's not going to do things outside of the law. There's been no corruption mentions with her. So she's seen as a bankable bet, and one that gives people assurance for that ticket, which I think is a good thing.
All right. Dr. Rowa, there have been accusations, particularly against Raila Odinga, of him being a puppet candidate for President Uhuru Kenyatta. We know the caliber of Martha Karua. Does this finally give legitimacy or remove these allegations of puppetry from Raila Odinga?
It's very interesting, and that's a very, very fair question. I think for us to answer that question, we must first interrogate what we want leadership to look like as a country, specifically political leadership. So when I look at the events that are coming up in August the 9th, I look at it from 2 lenses. One is the political aspect, which talks about the organization, where you get the mandate to govern. And then the other pillar, if I can just play it back very quickly, the other pillar is the functionality of it, the management. Now you've mobilized, you've got the mandate, now you have the right to manage the functions of it and the service delivery. So there are those 2 pillars. Now, if you look at how we have looked at this equation in the past, there's been a lot of emphasis on the political side of things. So much so that after we cross the political river, for lack of a better word, we forget the aspect of the functionality of government. And that's why you continuously see people who have even failed in their political pursuit still find their way back in aspects of management. So that for me is the one thing that is the problem, and you have to think about that when you're discussing this question. What other variable is critical here, before I come to the question you've just asked? One, when you're looking at, Raila Odinga and the question you've asked, and what is the state of the nation? We have to go back and interrogate that so that we can ask the question, in the person of Martha Karua, of Rigathi Gachagua, can they be trusted to turn things around if the state of the nation is not where it should be? Now, that's one of those. What about the national values of the national ethos? Where are we as a country? That's another thing that we need to interrogate. Now, based on those parameters that I've just given, then the question then arises, who is the right person to lead us in whatever situation that we find ourselves based on those parameters that I've just mentioned? And who is the best suited person to support them? Now, when I look at the Raila Odinga choice of Martha Karua, it was a political masterstroke in my view. And to some extent, I'm also thinking it is bringing out certain other aspects that were not envisaged, that particular announcement. I want to believe that Raila is trying to retrace his steps as a reformer, something that was very quickly diminishing, especially in the last 2 to 3 years. That is one. Two, there's the question of the puppet, which you have just brought in. Is he a project? So assume then that he was, and he wanted to disabuse himself of that, then he has to find somebody outside of the known circles of government or politics to try and cut that out. You get me? And I think then Martha becomes very pivotal in creating that change of image for Raila Odinga. So the question that has always bedeviled Kenyans' minds, that this Raila Odinga's presidency is a continuation of the Jubilee government, has now been deconstructed with the entry of Martha Karua. Right. And I think that was a very intelligent move on the part of Azimio.
Kennedy, we're talking about integrity. Martha Karua is, a big leader for so many reasons, because of what we've seen over the years. But politicians will tell you numbers is what matters. Other than that, does Martha Karua bring to the table in terms of numbers?
Yeah, so you see, Martha, if you look at it from the general political view, then you're looking at Martha representing Mount Kenya. And so when you're talking about Mount Kenya, within the region, about 9 counties within Mount Kenya that, sit about 5 million, voters. And then when you bring in now the diaspora within the country, then we're talking about an extra 5 million. So we're talking about 10 million voters that Martha would be able to influence and bring to the table. I mean, if, the plan goes as expected, we are certain that I think Rigathi Gachagua has done a very good job to try and ensure that there is no easy penetration of Azimio into Mount Kenya. So there is a potential of 10 million that Martha can bring, but the reality of how much she can bring is still something that's up in the air. And I think the announcement is good, but it defines the next steps, which are most important. How do we mobilize and get the votes to come into the Azimio basket? And you see, looking at the set of principles or criteria that the Azimio running mate selection panel had set out, ability to mobilize votes is one of the key considerations that they looked at. Of course, leadership, ability to bring transformative leadership. There were multiple other things, constitutionality, are you in good books with the Constitution? And if you ask me, compared to the rest of the other candidates within Azimio, Martha ticked most of those boxes. And I agree with my colleague. Martha and Raila go a long way back. They are pro-reform. And, there are multiple touch points that they have had in the past, pushing the reform agenda. If you look onto the other side, then you do not see a pro-reform set of candidates. You actually see, two candidates who have a history of the previous regime that the pro-reform candidates were trying to fight. And so the space is very clear. This Azimio team is a pro-reform team, and this other team, I would very safely say, is a team of the old KANU organization that wanted to maintain the status quo. So I believe that the selection, the voters should be able to, and especially the 10 million plus voters coming from the Mount Kenya region, should be able to make the choice, be able to look at it from the aspect of pro-reform and anti-reform, and make the choices.
If I can make a quick comment, if you don't mind, and this can help us here. I think in terms of Martha's brief, when this compelling proposition for her to join Azimio was being made, I honestly believe that the numbers were the last thing in Azimio and Raila's mind. I think a new image was very, very critical. And that is what I believe Martha is doing, package the entire Azimio outfit differently. But then, like I said, there were going to be some other consequences that probably were not thought of earlier. We're beginning to see some disquiet in the other alliance. Yes, beginning to see some disquiet in a certain stronghold of a certain alliance. If you look at what's going on today online, the kind of visits that Martha has done, it's beginning to distort the equation as we view it. Those are the benefits that are accruing to Azimio, in my view, over and above what I believe was the principal purpose for her to be included in this formation.
All right. But like 5 minutes before we take a first break, but Daisy, Mother Karua runs in 2013, 44,000 votes. So what she gets. Looking at the patterns in this very last nominations, like you have said, IEBC had to ensure that parties are conforming to the 2/3 gender rule. The number of women who have succeeded in nominations, other than the woman reposition, where will Mother Karua get these numbers? Of course, with the risk of getting into trouble with you.
I don't think it's fair to make a comparison with 2013.
No.
Because every election happens
different.
within a certain context. And remember, the mobilization in 2013 was saving the Jubilee duo from the gallows of the ICC. And that's what they were running on. And it was an appeal to the Mount Kenya vote, save your son from the gallows. Same thing from Rift Valley. So anybody who was running in Rift Valley against Uhuru Kenyatta was being seen as selling him, like wanting to send him off to the gallows. So it was a very different election. This is also, remember, we are in transition. Yes, Uhuru Kenyatta's shadow looms large within Azimio, but I think he's also one of the unsung heroes in yesterday's moment, even allowing it to happen, because he's essentially seemingly agreed to cut off his feet, and allow that boat to sail without his looming shadow, because that looming shadow had made it look more like a contest between Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, and that's what Kenya Kwanza has been banking on, because they want that contest so that they can appeal to a sympathy vote that, it's a betrayal, a betrayal of a promise, okay? But bringing Martha in has shifted the political landscape significantly. And a lot of people have begun to remember, because it's like, as you've said, that it's as though Raila is recovering his, revolutionary credentials, because we must appreciate that his presence in in Kenya's political landscape has worked to enhance democracy. And now he's given us a tectonic shift. Yesterday was an earthquake. The excitement from many quarters, because it's not just exciting for women, it was exciting for the apathetic voter, and also very many people who admire Martha Karua and what she stands for. So she's going to bring in votes. There are people who have seen Azimio, Martha, as their candidate. Many people. It will also bring in that Mount Kenya vote. Women in Mount Kenya, many will resonate with that vote. And I do believe it's early days yet. It is early days yet. Please also remember that Kenya Kwanza have been campaigning for how long? 3 years. Four years. They've been on the political landscape. So it's like a marathoner who has run way ahead, you know? And basically you've expended your energy, your message and everything. Now here comes a new, you know, the guys who've been storing up their energy. And I do believe we're going to see a significant shift. I believe we'll see a significant shift.
All right. I still have a minute before we go for the break. And you talk about, you know, Raila Odinga reclaiming his reform credentials. Don't you think that is dangerous to have a candidate who looks like, you know, they can shed this when it is convenient, for example? Why is he reclaiming that reform tag?
I would have called it convenient if the person nominated for the office you're discussing was not Martha. Then I would say it's another game being played.
Okay.
If you've studied Martha enough, you know the kind of person that she is. She's a no-nonsense, and she stands for something. I am persuaded that Raila Odinga and Azimio gave Martha a very compelling proposition. That proposition must have sat very well with the values and value system to say yes. And that is why I am convinced and very confident that the decision by Raila Odinga, there was no other way out. This was the savior for his mission going forward. So I'm not saying it like a game anymore. In fact, the people within Azimio are the ones who should reshape their thinking to suit the new entrant into their
I know Kennedy, that's my view. We must say something.
Okay.
Let's say something.
Well, we'll come back.
We'll pick it up.
All right.
Cool. Okay. You're taking a breather live from Norfolk Hotel. You're watching Kenya Decides. As on YouTube, you can continue watching us and of course leave us your feedback at Kioria at KBC Channel 1 in all the social media sites. We're live from the Norfolk Hotel and we're talking about the choices made yesterday and the day after and today morning about running mates. But of course we spent some considerable time on the Azimio tickets. Well, I don't know whether it's Karua or whatever the other thing they're talking about. But Kennedy, you wanted to, you know, get into it. Right.
Yes. I really wanted to, to respond. There are 2 points that have been raised here. Raila is reclaiming his old reform credentials. And 2, that Raila, kind of selected or appointed, let me use the word selection, that selected Martha. It is only in Azimio that have seen a very well-documented process that can be audited, okay? That they set out criteria for selecting their running mate. And they can justify, all those points that you look at resonate extremely well with, Chapter 6 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, and also even with the preamble. And it looks like they designed this process to ensure that they get a running mate who fits the bill constitutionally. And then the rest then would come in. This is a political process, so we have to be alive to the political realities that numbers matter. So the numbers cannot be the last thing that a presidential candidate, especially in a hotly contested presidential race like this one, would want to consider. He would have to make that.
What would you want to consider?
He would have to make that probably number 1 or number 2 or number 3 without diluting the extra values that are important, like the national values and the principles that the candidate that they have identified espouses. And if you look at Raila, and going back into the years, you see a gentleman who is consistent in terms of delivering reform in government for the people of Kenya. But he's a practical politician, so he changes he tactfully changes to suit the existing circumstances in which he's playing. But in my view, he remains extremely forthright to the, to the principle of delivering a true reform in the way the government of Kenya is run to the benefit of the people. And I don't think that he's reclaiming. He's not reclaiming. He's only playing the same song, but to a different audience at this point in time. And the process has actually yielded Martha Karua. It is not, this was not a negotiated process as much as the one that was done in Karen, was done. But this was a selection that came out of a process that was started and whose outcome was, clearly, the expected outcome was clearly defined. And I think Martha fitted that bill. And the fact that Martha came out strong and number one in this selection process was, for me, a very good one. I want to remind you that, the chair of that selection panel said that they have submitted 3 names to the presidential candidate, and those names are presented to the presidential candidate on basis of priority, I would say. So number 1 candidate, there was a number 2 candidate, and there was a number 3 candidate. I do not know where Martha fell, but I want to imagine that Martha fell in number 1. Because if you look at the other set of 2 candidates, I guess she ticked more boxes as per the criteria that was set out by Azimio than the other 2 candidates.
Okay. Before we, exit the subject of Azimio, Daisy, and it's something you alluded to. For a person who went to court to represent parties that were opposed to the Building Bridges initiative, then Raila Odinga says this will be my Justice and Constitutional Affairs Minister other than being Deputy President. And he has made a pledge that once he becomes president, I am going to revive BBI. That means then probably Martha Karua will be set in a position where she is the one to spearhead these changes to the Constitution.
First of all, I think it's important to understand that even as Linda Katiba, we're not opposed to constitutional change. But constitutional change must be done within the confines of the law. And that is exactly what was being fought, the unconstitutionality of the process of the BBI. Constitutions are living documents, and they must have enough leeway to allow for the people to change and make amendments to enhance certain aspects and democratic dividends to the country. So in her speech, if you listen very carefully, she said that as Justice and Constitutional Affairs Minister, should they win, she would ensure that if time for constitutional amendment comes, that it will be done within the confines of the law. And please remember that even the courts themselves struck down BBI because of the unconstitutionality of several of those clauses. So I think it's unfair. BBI is dead. Please, let's just agree that BBI is dead for here and now. Moving forward and looking at what awaits the next government, because there are many issues facing Kenya, so many. We have a literal economic crisis on our hands, We have social issues, we have unemployment issues, food security issues. Constitutional amendments are not going to be a priority. I can guarantee you that. So even if there's a commitment, maybe by goodwill, because you don't want to look like you were defeated in your efforts to amend the Constitution, there's also the pragmatism of having to deal with the issues that are bedeviling the country and the citizens. So it would be very calloused for, for a new government to come in and assuming that it would be Azimio government, and they're like, okay, so now let's begin reggae again. Even the people will stone you. People are already crying. They're like, we want issues, address cost of living. Cost of living has become unbearable for many people. Livelihood pressures. Our shilling is losing value every day, and our economy is not doing very well. We have to address issues of productivity. So that's the priority for the incoming government. I don't see constitutional amendment anywhere in the horizon, at least for the next 2-3 years.
What do you think? What would you expect Martha to do?
I would expect her to ensure that any constitutional amendment, remember that as the advocates for the push for the implementation of the 2/3, one of the avenues that we have proposed is an amendment to the Constitution to lock down the numbers outside of subsidiary legislation, so that nobody ever gets to play around with the issues again. So she will definitely she would ensure that whatever amendments are being proposed fall within the requirements of the Constitution, the procedures, the process of the Constitution. And remember, they're not the only ones. We even had a popular initiative ourselves. So amendments to the Constitution can be driven, through Parliament or by citizens. So whatever the case, it will have to meet muster. It will have to meet the threshold of constitutionalism.
All right. Dr. Rowa.
Yes.
Looking at William Ruto, the Kenya Kwanza presidential flag bearer, Kennedy says, of course, not so much regard should be given to numbers. Obviously, he lines up the issues to tick before you get to numbers. But for William Ruto, did he have a choice?
A choice with regard to?
In terms of, looking at these other candidates vis-a-vis the numbers.
Oh, okay. The Kenya Kwanza alliance process was shrouded in a lot of mystery. So it's very difficult to tell the step-by-step approach that they took in getting to the decision that they did get into. But now we're speaking about a nominee in the name of Rigathi Gachagua. In fairness to him, then we must ask, what is it that the deputy president saw that gave him the nomination as his number 2? I think consolidation of Central Kenya voters was critical. That one, I think, and I want to believe that Rigathi was going to be very instrumental in locking that. The little that I've researched on him, the little that I've read, tells me that he's a very good mobilizer on the ground, and I think he really resonates. He has other issues, but he really resonates and connects to the people on the ground. And I think for me that was a big asset for the deputy president to consider. Taking time also to analyze him, in fairness, for this particular discussion, I realized that he's a former district officer,
former DO.
Former DO in the Moi government, and what that brings to me is a person who has certain attributes, a person who has a certain skills or competencies that could be useful in the DP's campaign machinery. So if you talk about efficiency, making things happen, can-do attitude, I kind of get a sense that Rigathi possesses all those, besides, of course, consolidating the Central Kenya vote. So all the sideshows aside, I'm convinced and persuaded that could be some of the considerations Deputy President William Ruto made in giving Rigathi that consideration.
All right. When he was elucidating the whole process, for the record, I was at Karen for more than 17 hours as we waited for that very decision of the running mate. But he mentions Ndindi Nyoro, he mentions Anne Waiguru, mentions Kithure Kindiki, mentions Alice Wahome, and now Rigathi Gachagua, including Speaker Justin Muturi. But when you look at all these candidates, and I'm asking the very same question I was asking Dr. Rowa, did the deputy president have a choice other than settling for Rigathi Gachagua? Even did he wanted to consolidate the mountain vote?
Certainly he had many choices. He would have taken Ndindi Nyoro, he would have taken the governor of Kirinyaga. He would have taken many others, but the reality on the ground is for him, because like Dr. Rowa is saying, I'm not really sure what they were considering, but certainly for them, I think the numbers of voters that could be delivered from Mount Kenya was crucial for them, and that for me seemed to have been the most important consideration. And you can be able to see how that is now panning out. The choice of Rigathi is now leading to some disharmony within, the Kenya Kwanza alliance. And
disharmony from what quarters? Because, analyzing it critically, it appears like Kenya Kwanza was able to contain the fallout more than Azimio did.
I don't think there is a fallout in Azimio, if you ask me.
You don't think Kalonzo's exit is a fallout?
No, I don't think that Kalonzo's exit is a fallout. Look, because there had been so many signals that Kalonzo had been sending right from the beginning. So it's not something that was a surprise to Azimio. It's something that they had probably foreseen, and they've been trying to manage it, just to ensure that it doesn't happen. But where there is a process, and that's why Kalonzo submitted himself to the process. You got to probably accept the outcome of the process or reject it. But where there is a negotiation, you could actually refuse to accept the outcome of that negotiation. And that is what is happening in the Kenya Kwanza Alliance.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Because you talk about a fallout in Kenya Kwanza. Kithure Kindiki came out yesterday because he was one among the biggest candidates for running mate. Came out yesterday, said the process went the way it was. I'm going to take a break from active politics. In Azimio, we've seen the exit of Maendeleo Chapchap, Pa, and finally Kalonzo Musyoka. Who do you say was able to maintain, or rather to contain a fallout between the two sides?
I mean, look, if you're looking at the fallout before yesterday,
before and after yesterday,
then of course there are many more out of out of Azimio than within KK. But we are. I think more importantly is the reaction of the contenders post selection. I think more than the reaction before selection, because we were expecting that there would be some trading games there, and some people who would feel like, look, I don't want to get to this point if I am not sure that I'm going to be selected, or let's negotiate this thing so that I'm remaining here with you as long as certain minimum agreeable dividends are given to me or committed to me. I think to that extent, Kenya Kwanza managed pre-selection. They managed their team pretty well than Azimio. But I think post-selection, there are more noises within Kenya Kwanza than they're going to be in Azimio, because Kindiki, his choice to stay out of politics, having been a very strong contender, means that there is there's some sense of disharmony.
But what choice does he have? Because he was not running in Tharaka Nithi. What choice does he have other than moving out of after the podcast?
I mean, look, we know that government is big. The Kenya Kwanza has not already won the government, so there is need for him to still stay within the team and help the process and help their candidates to be able to to win the election. But I think that the choice of Gachagua, is very shrouded, if you ask me. I think there are many subtle things that were considered. Ability to mobilize, I think that is his big advantage. He's a good mobilizer, having been in the provincial administration, so he knows what is important, when you're trying to mobilize the team on the ground, and he knows how to go about that. And of course, he's coming from also a very populous county, as well as the money that is needed to be able to get things going. But he's also the art of making a president requires people who go out and get things done, and that is Rigathi Gachagua. He goes out and gets things done, and he returns back with results. And that's what the deputy president currently would need in his team.
All right, I have 10 minutes to wind up. Can't believe it. Daisy. Kithure Kindiki is soft-spoken. I don't know whether he's a pushover. But I mean, you can look at his history, even his time as majority leader, deputy speaker. There are those who think, looking at the relationship that has existed between William Ruto, the deputy president, and the president, and the acrimony therein, William Ruto needed a William Ruto deputy president.
Well, one of the things that we must do, even when looking at this, is to divorce emotions from this whole process, okay? Because there are those things about the camaraderie, you know, the caliber of person, but when you get down to it, when the rubber meets the road, politics is a game of numbers. Because if the numbers don't add up, you will not be on the House on the Hill. It's really as simple as that. So beyond the excitement and the aesthetics of it would look good, you know, to have a female running mate, but if she can't bring you votes, it's of no use to you, you know? And I think when you look at the caliber of the candidates or the you know, the potentials that were in that camp, and regardless of what people may think of him, he is a formidable community organizer. He's done it before. Please remember that he was the personal assistant to candidate Uhuru Kenyatta in 2002 and mobilized seriously for him. He's able to mobilize not just within Mount Kenya. He's able to, you know, cross different parts of the country, including Rift Valley, to mobilize the Mount Kenya vote wherever it is. And you know, it is not just located at the mountain. He has the deep pockets and he has the gift of the gab. He is also a great debater. He has the issues. He doesn't shy away from controversy, and he's able to take on, you know, even the difficult questions. He's able to do that, and that's what you need. You need somebody who can sell this ticket and make believers out of doubters, and William Ruto has that in Rigathi Gachagua, and that's what you want. So it's not going to be an easy ride, you know, for either of them, because now the rubber meets the road. So it's, I mean, you see, look at Martha. She hit the ground running. You know, she did not. She's not running around, you know, doing a victory lap, saying, hey, you know, here I am. She has gone straight to work because she knows at the end of the day, it's about numbers. It's about bringing those votes into the ballot.
Let's talk about this. Okay.
John, if you allow me, just to, you know, add to what Diasy has said, you know, I think if you look at Rigathi throughout the entire 4 years that the deputy president has been in an electioneering mode, Rigathi has been with the deputy president. So Rigathi is a very loyal assistant to the deputy president, and that loyalty is actually very important. You see, what we have seen in the last 5 years, we've seen a fairly dysfunctional presidency where the deputy and the president are not sitting on the same table. I mean, look, 2 years of no cabinet meeting is a big concern. Okay, and so what you're looking for, actually, what these presidential candidates should be looking for is a very good measure of loyalty, ability, chemistry, ability to work together and stay the course for a long time. And I think Rigathi and the deputy president are fairly close together.
Appeared to have ticked the boxes in terms of what he's saying. But I know, listening to insiders, it appears like there's a bit of acrimony before getting to, you know, arriving at the Gachagua. But let's talk about the son of Kuru. Question is he now a spoiler or a third force? You heard me right.
A spoiler or a third force?
Yes.
That's an interesting question. With tremendous respect, he will not be a third force.
Allah.
Yeah, he will not be a third force. But he brings nuisance value. One, because you can't fully ignore him. And with the noises he's making, somebody will have to talk to him if the battle ahead is to be won in the first round. That's what I think. He has done himself a lot of disservice, in my view, a lot of disservice. We are beginning to question certain aspects of his leadership, philosophy, and all that kind. So he needs, I think, he needs to redeem himself. But will he be a third force? The answer is no. Does it present something of nuisance value that any of the other two candidates might find useful? The answer is yes. So they'll still speak to him.
Diasy, a near 3 million votes are being hived off Azimio. That is if they don't engage him in between now and the day his name is supposed to be, or when he's supposed to present his nomination papers. Is he a spoiler?
For now, yes, I think he is being a spoiler, and unfairly so, because he's been shouting from the rooftop, if you don't choose me, you're gonna lose. But guess what? In 2013 and 2017, that was the ticket. It was a Raila Kalonzo ticket, called NASA, and it didn't gain the traction. I think if he had chosen Kalonzo, it wouldn't have excited Kenyans, because it's the same old, and Kenya Kwanza would be laughing all the way to the house on the hill, because it would have been very, very easy to fight that ticket. And of course, you saw them really trying to encourage that ticket, because they know if we get that ticket, we're home and dry. I think that he needs to, Raila, in making his speech, he announced that, you know, should he become president, he's going to be his chief minister. So there's something for him, and I think that's good. I don't think it would have been a good fit in the event that, you know, that they would become president, you know, that they would have won the presidency. It would have been a very cantankerous one, because it's been a cantankerous one. We remember the relationship between the vice president and the prime minister. It was really divisive. And you may talk about the 3 million vote, but I always like to remind people, when Raila did the handshake, Kalonzo, Mudavadi, and Wetangula, who were the NASA co-principals, they were not even able to bring together a baraza, you know, to bring those their voters. No, I think it's fair, because, you know, if you're a political, because what it looked like is that they've been riding on the coattails of Raila. And I think Raila's been magnanimous, despite the nuisance that he has been throughout this process, the selection process. I'm coming, I'm not coming, I'll go for the interview, I won't go, you know, just being very neither here nor there, you know, and insisting through blackmail and, you know, by proxy blackmail, choose me or else. That's not, I mean, for the diplomat that he is, remember he's been foreign affairs minister, and he's also negotiator, you know, within the region. I think he's been very, very undiplomatic and behaved very badly, even trying to steal the thunder from the moment yesterday. You know, here is Azimio announcing the running mate, and you're busy announcing your candidature after engaging with the process. It just comes across badly. And I think that they would do well, Wiper Party would do well to actually have a sit down, because Raila has shown his willingness to continue to work with them, and he's offering him a portfolio which, number one, if he runs alone, he's not going to get, because he's definitely not going to win. And if we were to go to Kenya Kwanza have already dished out the seats. Chief Minister has gone elsewhere. So he's got to, you know, count his losses ahead of time. So I do think that he is a spoiler, and he needs to stop it.
In a minute, because we need to wind up.
Okay.
When history is written, because even Gideon Moi has cleared the air today to say that he's still in Azimio, despite the fact that he showed up a little bit at KICC, and we saw him at the SKM Command Center. But when history is written, in your opinion, what do you think history will say about Kalonzo Musyoka?
I think history would say a lot of negative things about Kalonzo Musyoka. You see, even the Constitution of Kenya requires credible leadership, and credibility is something that you build over time. Okay? Now, when you are unable to show that you can take a sacrifice for the benefit of the country, that you are trying to push personal agenda, and there is no moment in time that I even heard him talk about, okay, what about my people, Ukambani, you know? It was about him. I think that shows, you know, sheds negative light on Kalonzo, and I think something that will go down in history as the most difficult partner that you know, Raila could have had, or Raila had in his political life. And like you're saying, maybe Wiper Party needs to call the house to order and help him.
And do expel the party leader?
Yeah, I mean, look, party leaders can be expelled. Why not? They have a constitution that guides them.
Yeah.
It's it's important that Kalonzo reviews, how he wants to run his politics. Yeah. And like today, in this year, he's the biggest loser in this whole political game. And you see what? It's not, if I were him, it's not Raila that is his enemy. His enemy is actually the deputy president, who has longer life, political life, can stay here longer. If I were him, I would actually be training my guns on the deputy president, so I checkmate him. Okay. So that post Raila's presidency, then I have a far much stronger position to clinch the seat. He's training his guns in the wrong direction.
Totally.
Unfortunately, you have to wind up. Thank you very much, Daisy.
Thank you so much
for joining us tonight. Kennedy, Ojung'a, and Dr. Julian Rowa. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for your insight.
Thank you very much.
Unfortunately, that's how we put a cap on Kenya Decides tonight. God bless you. Have yourself a fantastic night. We're live from the Norfolk Hotel.